Hi, I'm Dana Pappas. I'm the Director of Officiating Services for the National Federation. Welcome to the All Over the Place podcast, where the fun sanity never ends.
Hello and welcome back to All Over the Place. I'm your host, Eric Provoznik. With me, as always, Jim. How are you doing tonight?
I am great. How are you?
As always, life is grand. Life is awesome. Well, of course, we're in the middle of the baseball playoffs right now, and I'm I keep getting put on fields. I can't complain. I won't complain. Life is awesome. So
never a dull moment.
They've been smooth games so far. So right there. So yeah, and as you can see, folks, it's just me and Jim tonight. However, Christine is going to be adding some inserts later. Marty, we don't know. Marty's on vacation. He's back east right now. I will not say where. We don't want to, keeping him a little under wraps. He's on vacation. Don't go robbing their house. Knock that shit off. I said that. So, but Christine will be joining us with some inserts later. We've got another Threefer tonight, folks. And our Threefer this evening, we're going to be talking not about music. Where's your shock face, Jim?
We are truly all over the place with our topics.
We're not talking about movies tonight. We're getting a little headier tonight, and we are going to be talking about influential school educators in our lives. There's the Threefer, and plus one will be a non-academic influence in our lives. And we're being older, and as you can see with the backdrop there, we got the old school blackboard, and just digging into the archives here in the brain. But here's the thing: these people are such big influence on our lives. Didn't have to dig too far. So without further ado, Jim, I'm going to pass the torch over to you to get things kicked off on this week's Threefer.
Alrighty. So for my number 3, I'm going to go with a high school English teacher of mine named Mr. House. And he, among other things, taught a class. It was an American culture class, and which I attended, and it was basically an attempt to analyze and think critically about American culture. Oh. And it was it was a very interesting class. Definitely had some propaganda mixed in. Part of it involved, screening Michael Moore movies and Oliver Stone movies and talking about them, things like that. The kind of things you'd see at a California school in the 90s. But I really am grateful that I took that class, because he really taught a lot of kids to think critically about things. And that is something I believe that a lot of schools, public schools especially, are not doing these days. So I am very thankful for it. I'm very thankful to have him as a teacher. It's a really important skill, and one that I have tried my best to use throughout my life. So very grateful to that, and consider him to be a very important teacher in my life for that.
Actually, critical thought, what a concept. And yeah, I can't speak to it. I don't have kids in public school. I don't have kids at all. So, but it's from what I've noticed, in the workforce with the younger generation, it's hard. But I don't want to get into this turning into a get off my lawn thing. But critical thought, very important. And I had Mr. Perry was my civics teacher in high school, and I guess Mr. Perry deserves an honorable mention, because he actually gave me bonus points. Well, he's giving everybody bonus points if they could write down on one of our civics quizzes 10 bonus points if you could get the preamble word for word. And I'm back there. Mr. Provoznik, yes, sir. What are you doing? Humming. Keep it down, please, Mr. Provoznik. I don't know the preamble without singing the Schoolhouse Rock, so that's what I was doing.
See, that was a little bit after my time, and I was a 90s kid, so we didn't actually have civics. We had social studies, which is kind of what civics morphed into at some point in our history, and it did have some elements of that, but...
So, see, social studies for me was elementary school.
Right.
And then get to high school with civics, and then, see, California public schools, look what you did there.
Social studies, it remained all the way up.
There you go. So, well, kicking my number 3 off, first want to give an honorable mention, because this was hard for me doing, because I've been blessed with a lot of excellent educators in my life, and teachers who just took an extra interest and made learning a lot more fun. And my first honorable mention will be to Jeff Eustick, who was my junior year of high school, and he was a geography teacher, which I think I had him in sophomore year as a geography teacher. And then I love geography, and he make looking at maps fun, and I like maps anyway. So it was, but Mr. Eustick, just an incredibly funny guy, down to earth guy, made geography fun. So when I had him the next year, my junior year, for AP European history, and it was just, he made it dynamic, and he didn't. I'm trying to remember what teacher, what in the movie Teachers, where the escaped. The guy from the loony bin who was in there teaching American history, he would dress up in just different costumes. Mr. Eustick was just shy of that, but he just made, again, a dynamic teacher, made learning fun. And quick little side story with that one, I was umping a game out in California last year, and one of the kids on the back had a name on the uniform, and it's Eustick. And I said, in between games, I can't remember when I talked to him, I said, you wouldn't happen to be related to a Jeff Eustick, would you? Because I know Mr. Eustick, I think he was originally from California, but after Ohio, he moved back, and he was up in the Carmel, California area. And the kid said, yeah. I said, was he a teacher back in Ohio? Yeah. And then he introduced me to his dad after the game, and then the dad, so Mr. Eustick's brother, I got to meet him and the dad, and they called him up, and Mr. Eustick got a hold of me on Facebook, and so it was just one of those small world things. And it was, and I was bragging Mr. Eustick up with his brother and his dad, so it was a very cool little small world story there. But Mr. Eustick, my honorable mention. It's a long honorable mention, I apologize again, folks here on All Over the Place. We all know how I can just like fly off on tangents, but Mr. Eustick, awesome teacher. But my number 3, well, I'm going to stick in high school, and it's also a sophomore year teacher, and that would be Dan Dick. And yes, he giggly high schoolers, and he was my drama teacher to begin with, and he eventually he was a speech teacher as well, or he was the speech team, if I recall correctly. And another guy, younger guy like Mr. Eustick, 20s and early mid-20s, and just again made learning fun. And of course, as a speech teacher, as a drama teacher, and how can't you make drama fun, or unless it's a drama, not a comedy. But no, he was just an amazing guy, and he eventually ended up teaching my youngest brother. So 7 years later, he has him, and I'm not saying it's going to sound like I'm kissing his ass, but or an ego rub. But he told my brother Mark how much he enjoyed having me as a student, and that speeches for graduation speeches. So senior year, we all had to audition in front of Mr. Dick was one of the ultimate judge of them. And he said to my brother Mark, your brother had the most original graduation speech I've ever heard. And I don't have many regrets in life, but I didn't get chosen for that when other people were picked. Okay, whatever. But Mr. Dick liked it so much, he wanted me to say it at the senior breakfast the day before we went over for rehearsals for graduation. And again, not many regrets in life. This is one of them. I was a wise ass. I was trying to impress friends, trying to be cool. One of the few times in my life where I caved to peer pressure, now that I think about it. But I left the speech at home, and I just got up in front, and the speech was called A Big Thank You. And it was, I could have done some of it from memory, but I just went up there chewing on a thing of celery from the breakfast. And I just said, thank you, and sat back down. He was pissed, rightfully so. Right. And he just came over to the I went back all smug, sat down next to my friends that I was trying to impress. And he was mad. If he could have dropped an F-bomb on me, I would have deserved it. I went to the wall for you to do this today, and that's the thanks I get. And then for him to say to my brother Mark, I mean, so the bygones were bygones, but
so you gave him the Alfred Hitchcock Oscar speech. In other words,
pretty much, yeah.
Do you know? Have you heard that before?
Oh yeah, mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yep.
That was his entire Oscar speech.
Hang on a second. It's not often I get to do this, but let's tell our audience about that one. We are now in trivia with Jim.
So Alfred Hitchcock never received a Best Director Oscar in his entire career, despite being maybe the best director of all time, certainly in the top 5.
Absolutely, not even arguably, absolutely, yes.
Probably top 3. And so he finally got a Lifetime Achievement Award, which is kind of the pity Oscar in the business. Right. So I don't know if he was just salty about that or if he just wasn't feeling particularly verbose that night. But he got up on stage and his entire victory speech, or his entire speech, was "thank you," and he took his award and sat back down. And
I'd like to say I was being that clever. But no, I was being a full jackass, Mr. Dick. If somehow this filters its way to you, Dan, I apologize yet again, and thank you very much for saying it to my brother Mark. That just still means something to me, and yeah, it. But high school was fun, and it's a lot. I know a lot of people don't say that. There's like, oh, high school sucks. I'm like, these are two of the guys, Dan Dick and Jeff Usick, made my high school education, and Mr. Perry as well. Very dry sense. He was the opposite, Mr. Perry, but my civics teacher, but incredibly funny guy. But this made high school awesome, and I just want to. Dan Dick, my number 3 on the influential school educators.
Well, with a name like that, it's a good thing he wasn't a junior high teacher because he never would have gotten through a lesson with all the Beavis and Butthead like comments about his name.
Oh, he was still getting it from freshmen and sophomores. So, but he steered right into that hurricane, and he's like, "Go ahead, write questions down. I'll answer every one of them." And surprisingly, there weren't that many juvenile things going on. So, but yeah, junior high would have been a little worse for him. But Dan Dick, my number 3 on the influential school educators. And we're going to kick it on over now to Christine for her first pick of the night. Or day, morning, whenever you're watching this show. To Christine.
Okay, so my first pick is my elementary school music teacher, Mrs. Loveg. I grew up always having the singing lead in the school plays that we would do annually. And that was a huge influence on me. As a kid, I always wanted to be a teacher or a singer. I always knew I had a decent voice. People always told me I had a great voice, but, never want to be not humble about those things. But, so Mrs. Loveg always inspired me and coached me in singing and how to act, because a lot of those, they were singing leads and plays, so I was acting and singing, and she just was a huge inspiration to me, and I've always been a huge music lover and always enjoyed that class as a kid. Yes.
All right. That uncomfortable transition, because we really don't know what she said. We might edit around this. I don't know. We make it fun here on. We make it like a Jeff or Dan Dick class. So, but now, Jim, over to you for your second pick of the night.
Okay, my second pick is a chemistry teacher I had in high school named Mr. Miller. Really interesting guy, very, very smart, very funny. Had a very no-nonsense attitude about how to deal with us punks, especially the more unruly ones. But no nonsense, but also really had a great sense of humor. Was always cracking us up with his wit, interesting guy. He gave me a probably the best piece of advice I've ever gotten. Certainly the best piece of advice I got as a kid. He told us, if you want to be happy, look at what your parents and your grandparents did to make them happy, or look at what made them happy, and emulate that. And for some reason, when I was, just this doofy 17-year-old trying to figure things out, that piece of advice was just hit me like a ton of bricks. and I've kind of carried it with me ever since. It's just kind of that realization that there are kind of universal things that make people happy in every generation, and you don't have to feel all this insane pressure to chase some unique level of happiness for your generation, for your age group. Just look around at what made everybody happy before you that had been around the block a few times, and look at what they settled into and what made them content in life, and go after that. And it was just a piece of advice that became kind of one of my guiding lights in life as I got older. So infinitely grateful to him for that.
Coming from a chemistry teacher too, you wouldn't expect that kind of a sentimentality, and that I really dig that advice.
Absolutely, same here. Yeah, he was a really fascinating guy. So, that is my pick.
I dig it.
Number 2.
Well, for my number 2, silver, however you want to define this one, I'm going to go with it's a principal that I had in elementary school. And he only had him 1, maybe 2 years. I want to say 1, but again, just an amazing man, Bob Gribbling. And when you're in elementary school, all the teachers are like, "Hi," but Mr. Gribbling, a tall guy, and of course I haven't seen him since. I'm going to guess that he is a genuinely tall guy, not just tall to a 3rd and 4th grader that I was at the time, or just a 3rd grader. But what was so unique about Mr. Gribbling was he was one of those old school disciplinarians. Of course, the paddle was hanging up behind. It was I was fortunately a well-behaved kid. I hadn't gotten sneaky yet with things, but it was that fear of the what was the 70s, folks. People were paddled if you got out of line, just the way it was, and the little holes in there. And I won't say the people who got paddled most, because I've actually found out a lot of these people turn out to be good people. So, oh my gosh. The punishment actually might have worked eventually, but anyway. But Mr. Gribbling, again, it was that the iron fist under a velvet glove kind of thing. He wanted people to learn, and he just a tall guy, a big guy. Again, you're small. Everyone looks tall, but he just really again made education, and he was the principal, but at assemblies, things like that, he would always just it was just such a good positive energy and positive encouragement that was a staple around the house for me as well. And there's also something like my brother and I, this sticks with me to this day because it always made my mom so proud. Michael and I, the middle brother, we had I think we both had straight A's for the year. And at the assembly at the end of the year, they're giving the awards and all that. And he called my mom out and he said, not just 1 student, but 2 up here are receiving this award. And that starts at the home. And he gave it up to my mom. And that still means a lot to her. And
that's awesome.
And another thing, and this is where we're going to get a whole lot more fun. Mr. Gribbling also was big on physical education, and basketball was his thing. And 3rd grade, we got up crack of dawn, so we were in school. We would have basketball practice. The 3rd and 4th graders, he would teach separately, but we were up there going in. Then we'd shower, then we'd probably be at school, and we learned about swirlies. He oversaw. He maybe even taught us now I think about it. But again, Mr. Gribbling, I'm going to be copying you on this on Facebook. So if you did, I'm going to say you turned the other way when swirlies were going on. I could have sworn you taught us how to do it. Again, folks, it was the 70s and just a little clowning around. No physical harm, no true lasting physical harm was done to anybody under Mr. Gribbling's watch. You think he's going to get in trouble for this, Jim? There's got to be a statute of limitations on this. It was good-natured fun, people. Good-natured fun. And
these days, you could just say it was the 70s, and everybody just goes, "Okay, I get it." It was such a different time that you kind of just have to let everything go.
But we were playing basketball. That was the fun part of it. And it was also that year was 78, 79 was my 3rd grade year, and March Madness that year before was huge thing that it is now. But it's kind of what kicked off March Madness. Larry Bird versus Dr. J, Indiana State versus Michigan State. And he had us pick, like, who are you going to be cheering for? And I picked Larry Bird, Indiana State. So I guess, I've been destined to just be cheering for the team that comes in second place. My lot in life, for better and worse. But I picked Team Larry, and thank God for that, because Larry Bird became probably my biggest athletic role model. It makes me sick to see a guy just watch the ball go out of bounds. Larry diving after a ball in a Converse ad. But Mr. Gribbling, thank you for that. Thank you for inspiring educations, inspiring physical activity and athletics, and just Bob Gribbling, my numero 2 on my list of educators and influences.
Good man.
Christine, to you.
So my other love, of course, is reading and literature. And when I was in high school, my what year was it? I don't even remember. It was one of the years, can't even remember. Maybe senior year English, perhaps, that I had Mrs. DeMarco, although I knew her before then. So maybe I had her a different year. Anyway, doesn't matter. Had her as an English teacher, and she also was the POM coach. So I was on POMs, also an English class, and she always was so supportive and gave me great tips about my writing, and loved talking about concepts with me and the different things that we were reading, and always gave me ideas for things that I could read outside of that. So I, love Mrs. DeMarco from high school. Doesn't matter what year it was, I had her for English, and then also my POM coach, which was fun because that was dance and music, and there you go.
Cool. Very cool. Very cool. Jim, so you're capo tutti. Didn't even slur on that one.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because my pick is an Italian American gentleman.
I like happy coincidences.
Indeed. This fellow is my music teacher in high school, a fellow by the name of Bob Russell. I was unbelievably fortunate to have him as a teacher for many reasons. One being that in junior high, I had the music teacher from hell. And I mean, if you've seen the movie Whiplash, it was, it was like that. I mean, just made everything miserable, and made me not want to do music, not want to play the drums ever again. But I got into a different school and different district, and this fellow Bob Russell he was actually retired. He was this legendary music teacher from back in the day. In fact, his high school band had played at JFK's inauguration. That was one of his many claims to fame. So the guy was basically a legend in the high school music circuit, and retired and bored out of his gourd, and decided he wanted to go back to teaching because he couldn't stand being retired. And which are some of the most fun people you ever meet in the workplace. But I digress. He decided he wanted to come teach at our little Catholic school, and bring all his amazing expertise there. And he just, he was in his 70s at the time, and he brought this amazing energy and experience and just sense of fun and joy to everything. You talked about teachers that make things fun. I couldn't imagine anyone making anything more fun than he made music for us. And he just every day was, he was always cracking jokes, making us laugh. There were times I wasn't the best musician because I was just a dumb kid trying to figure out how to play and made mistakes, but he always had this kind of cheerfulness about it, even when he's correcting you and teaching you. He just made it an absolute joy to be there every day, and I couldn't wait to get to music class every day. Just unbelievably nice guy, fun guy. He had all these connections. He did the musicals at our school, and he had these Hollywood connections. We don't know what he did in Hollywood, but he did something. So he would have these these famous Hollywood people show up and help us with these plays. He had like I would walk into there and he did Once Upon a Mattress, and I walked in one day and there was Carol Burnett sitting there helping us with that play.
You've been in Carol Burnett's aura?
Yeah, and he did another one. He did another one, and oh jeez, the name is escaping me right now.
Anti-trivia with Jim.
Brain fart with Jim. Singing in the Rain.
Don't you dare tell me. No.
No, I'm telling you, it was. Of course, I can't remember his freaking name now that I'm telling this story, but
wait, no, actually, I think you made Gene Kelly.
Gene Kelly, thank you. Yeah,
there you go. You have told me this, yes, but yeah.
Just a couple of years before he passed away, he came over and helped us on a musical. It's just unbelievable. I don't know how he knew these people, but I guess they owed him favors or something, because they were showing up and helping us with choreography and all kinds of stuff. It was just unbelievable.
You got to watch, I don't remember this. You got to watch Gene Kelly teach choreography.
Well, yeah, I wasn't in the play. I just sat in it one day and watched it. But yeah, it was incredible.
There. Oh my! Wow.
Yeah.
I'm giddy over. If you can't figure it out, folks, I am giddy that Jim was not Carol Burnett. I think Gene Kelly's more impressive. Carol Burnett. Yeah. But Gene.
I mean, I was a dumb kid at the time. I had no idea who he was, but I found out later, and I was just wow. So.
And that's I did say I have a favorite dancer. Judge me all you want. I don't care.
Absolutely. The guy's amazing. So yeah, I mean, he just brought all this amazing stuff to our school and just made everything an absolute joy, made music so much fun. Just was the only reason I stuck with it for as long as I did, because he just showed me how much fun you could have. And after having a lot of teachers that thought you were supposed to teach something like music by being a drill sergeant, it was just such a relief to have someone say, no, you don't. This can be fun. You don't have to give somebody a hard time. You can make this enjoyable for everybody. And yeah, it was just I feel really, really fortunate. He finally passed away just a few years ago, but he'd been hung in there for a long time, obviously.
Because he had fun in life, and Frank, I'm convinced that God was allowed him to stick around.
I think he might have, for sure. Yeah, but yeah, absolutely incredible guy, and very, very fortunate to have had him as a teacher. And so, yeah, that is my numero uno for sure.
That, my friend, is an amazing numero uno, the capo di tutto capi. Capo. I'm not Italian. I got to quit trying to say that word. It's been a while since I've watched Goodfellas. That's the cure. I need to go watch Goodfellas again so I can let that flow.
I try to be Italian. I sound like Brad Pitt in Inglourious Bastards. I don't even try. Buongiorno.
I sit down with the Scorsese. I'm sounding like Vinnie Lucarelli there from Youngstown, Ohio, by way of a Scorsese flick. You know what I'm saying? So, but we're gonna stay in Warren, Ohio, but with a very quick another honorable mention to a guy who, and what kind of led me down this road to this topic. The internet can be a good and evil beast at the same time, as I think we've all kind of figured out in the days since the World Wide Web has appeared. But you go looking, I wonder what's up with this old teacher or that teacher or things like that. And going back to Mr. Gribbling, my number two, just people popping up on Facebook. It's again, the good and bad of things. But but I said, hey, whatever happened? What's going on with Mr. Schilling, who was my 7th and 8th grade? It was social studies, history, and just a little bit of everything. I think if I remember correctly, he was the assistant principal for a little while too, or assisting the principal. But he was a guy who was just my 2 years of Catholic school, incredibly witty, just sharp, and really, I think my love of current events, and that was his big thing. He loved current events. and it was an election, 84, the election year when we had the old Apple IIe, the election simulator, and when we came up with platforms and stuff like that. Mr. Schilling, just an amazing guy, and he passed away in the last few years. And I'm glad they got a scholarship set up for him. He went on to teach at the local Catholic high school that I would have gone to had we stayed in Warren. But JFK, Eagles, represent, almost represent. But Mr. Schilling, much love to that guy. And yeah, he was just the right kind of teacher. And it just hit me. He made sure that people pronounced my name properly when announcements would come up. I was a pretty decent basketball player. Thanks to Mr. Gribbling, starting early with me. By the time we got to Catholic school, these guys hadn't been playing as long as we had. But anyway, but my name would come up on the announcements on Monday or whatever after a game, and they'd butcher the last name Pervoznik. I know, shocker. But Mr. Schilling would march me up to the office, introduce me to the person doing the announcements, like, this is Eric Horvoznik. Can we get that right next time? Sometimes he did, sometimes he didn't. But Mr. Schilling, much love.
You know what? Good for him on that, because half my teachers couldn't even get my name right. So
you've got a 2-syllable name. Let me get Claver.
Apparently that was too many. Clover.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Americans. What are you going to do?
That's right.
Heathens, I say, heathens. But I am going to stay in Warren, Ohio, though, for, again, I've been blessed with as you can kind of tell with all these names, I'm coming up with honorable mentions left and right. I've been very blessed with excellent educators in my years. And two teachers, I've got to have a number one on this one because they worked together. They were fourth grade teachers together. And if I remember correctly, Mrs. Abruzzi stayed at fourth grade, and Mrs. Anderson just moved up, and Mrs. Abruzzi was my homeroom teacher fourth grade year. Mrs. Anderson was my fifth grade year, so fourth, fifth. And Mrs. Abruzzi, my fourth grade teacher, I was, by today's standards, I'd be a kid pumped full of ADD medication. As I mentioned, the straight A's, I was just, things came quickly to me. And so I was bored sitting there, all right, screw up a test on purpose for whatever reason. Mrs. Abruzzi saw something. And she also had a son who, an exceptional student. And she set up this program called Aspire. And I was one of her first students. And it was an accelerated learning class. And we went to the junior high once a week, learned much more focused things. But Mrs. Abruzzi saw that in me and tapped into it, and grateful for that. I was able to learn it at the rate that my brain was functioning. And Mrs. Anderson also tapped into that. And Sandy Anderson, who actually became friends with she and her husband, Ed. Ed worked for my dad in the asphalt seal coating business in the summer. He was a teacher too, so he had summers off. So we were out there doing asphalt seal coating. But Mrs. Anderson, yeah, I smell asphalt the same. I get sentimental. I'm weird. I know. I won't deny it. Tar's a fun smell. Blacktop. But Mrs. Anderson, she wanted, again, all these teachers wanted everyone to do well, but Mrs. Abruzzi and Mrs. Anderson, again, seeing what the potential that I had, they encouraged it. They made sure that I became the best student I could be. And Mrs. A, she followed, she would check in when I was they were public school when I went my 2 years in middle school, just because Mr. Ed was still working for my dad. So Mrs. A would check in to see how I was doing academically and everything. And Mrs. Abruzzi, Mrs. Anderson, my co-number ones from over there at, I'm getting my school screwed up here. That would have been Howland Glen. Yeah, Springs was my first one. Howland Glen Elementary School, and then we went to Mines for sixth grade year. But yeah, Mrs. Abruzzi, Mrs. Anderson. Yes, I know I'm an adult now. I feel like I should call them by their first names, but no. It's out of respect. Then we go back to that Italian stuff. It's respect. Respect the teachers, kids. That's what I'm saying.
Teachers are always Mr. or Mrs., no matter how old we get.
I still refer to my parents' friends that way. I mean, it's the way it is. But yeah. Sandy Anderson, Janina Bruzzi, my co-number ones, thank you for recognizing what I could do with the potential I had, and eternally grateful. Thank you.
Right on.
Christine, over to you.
So before I get to my favorite teacher ever, I want to give a nice honorable mention to Mr. Shrocko, who was not my counselor in high school. He actually was my boyfriend's counselor when he went to Bennett Academy in Lisle, Illinois. Shout out to the Red Wings over there. But Mr. Shrocko was amazing. Of course, I've mentioned in the past here that I grew up with an alcoholic father. It was very tough for me. I had irritable bowel syndrome when I was 16 years old, and it was always tough for me going to school. Didn't sleep at night a lot, and a lot of trouble, worry for being a teenager, and living in a toxic environment, more or less. My parents are both gone now, so I can say that. Sorry to my sisters if that hurts to hear that out loud. But it's the truth, right? So I would go into Mr. Shrocko's his office every morning just to summon the courage and the wherewithal to go to school and be there and stay there the whole day. So shout out to Mr. Shrocko. Also, want to give a shout out to Professor Blakesley, who was one of my college professors. I did a couple junior and senior, actually took some grad level classes with him as I was wrapping up my English degree at Southern Illinois. Kind of ran out of classes to take, so started taking graduate level classes. But anyhow, he was great, taught me characterization, and I took a literary criticism film class with him, which was fascinating and loved it. Did Citizen Kane and, all those other great movies that people like to look at from a literary standpoint. But the teacher that I want to mention as my number one is Charles Brummel, who was my junior year English teacher. He walked around with a wood sword that one of the past students had given him. Of course, we were studying Chaucer's tales that year and a lot of English, like old English literature type stuff, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and just really cool old stuff, fantastical type things. And loved him. He lit a fire in me. I wrote some of my best papers in his class that I've ever written. Just absolutely loved him and loved going to his class. It was so engaging. It's like that one pseudo class in Fast Times at Ridgemont High where everybody's sitting there and the teacher's talking and all the students are pretending to be so engaged and livened up by what the teacher's talking about. The class with him actually was that way. We actually loved being in class with him. He was so engaging and he made it fun, and we loved being in his class. At least I did anyway, but I think a lot of my friends did as well. So that's my number one pick is Charles Brummel, Mr. Brummel. And I actually named one of my first dogs Bartholomew Brummel, who was a Schipperke I had in college after him. So there you go. That's my number one pick.
This is good. I'm usually the guy closing out these round robins, but I like that the Christine's. She's bringing us home on this stuff tonight. So,
Yep.
But with that in mind, because this is all over the place, I'm going to call the optional. Christine, we're going to go to you first for our plus one tonight, which is the non-academic influence in our lives. Christine, over to you.
For my plus one, I am going to name Bill Semioli Sr. This was my boyfriend at the time's father. As I was finishing college at Oakland University in Rochester, Michigan, he was the editor-in-chief of Concrete International magazine, and he saw me, my potential. I'd been dating his son for a number of years at that time, had an English degree with a journalism minor, but didn't have a clue what I was going to do after school. Of course, I had started out wanting to be a teacher, No offense to any teachers, and I feel for you, saw how much they made and was like, nope, I'm going to do something else. And then also was looking at journalism jobs, seeing that back then in the early 90s, I could expect to make, $25,000 a year, $30,000 a year, whatever. So nothing great, especially Southern Illinois. I think the going rate down there was like $21,000 a year. Dismal. So I actually ended up going to work for my boyfriend's father right out of college. A little bit of nepotism, of course, yeah, sure, whatever. But I did get that job on my own merit. He did recommend me for it, but I went through a psychology test, did the interview, like all of that stuff, and got the job. And being a magazine editor right out of college was freaking amazing for me. I learned that I love editing. I love layout. Of course, back then we were doing, the printing out the articles and cutting them out and putting rubber cement on the back and making like full-on dummy pages that were sent off to the printer. Loved all of it. It was amazing. And I carried that throughout my career into being a technical writer and editor. And now I help people self-publish books, which is all using those same amazing skills that I learned in school. I'm definitely one of those people who's using my degree post-college. And now, 35 years later, loving it, love what I do. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Bill Simeoli Sr.
See, Jim, I knew I could trust her to be first after being the cleanup hitter. She's the lead off. I like it for this round.
And the last shall be first.
And the first. See, Catholic school kids, we get it.
Sometimes.
All those lessons. As a flood of names, sister this, sister that come into my head, and Mr. Schiller. So Jim, over to you.
Hopefully no bad memories of rulers.
No, I think one of them wanted to, but I will. Why am I blank on her name? Not Sister Beverly. Anyway, but she was an old school nun who I think if the ruler, if she would have had one, it would have been like the penguin in Blues Brothers. But no, she was. But rest in peace, Sister. Was it Sister Beverly? Anyway, but she contracted leukemia during 7th grade year. So yeah. It was the tough love. Again, it was the 80s, folks. Tough love was still allowed. And Sister Beverly, I think it was Sister Beverly. Yes. Anyway, but no rulers.
No rulers. Okay, fair enough. Okay, so for my plus one, I'm going with my karate Sensei Joe Meyer. Took Kempo in junior high, and he was my sensei. Really, really fantastic guy. I believe he's in retirement in Florida now, but he ran a dojo down in California where I lived, and he had an interesting life. He was involved in some of the B movies that were coming out, the really bad, cheesy martial arts movies. Somehow we got. No, that's way too high end for his stuff. Like stuff you'd never heard of, like Ninja Warriors and stuff like that. And he did the stunts for him. He always got killed in them. And so, he would hold screenings for these movies in his dojo. We could all eat popcorn and laugh at him getting killed because he always died in them. And at one point, I don't know how he found it, but he actually found a screening of one of them at a theater in San Jose and took us to it. And we got to see our sensei get killed on the big screen. That was fun.
Nice.
But I don't know what kind of dollar store theater shows those movies. But anyway, he was a really, really cool sensei to have, and a couple of things he taught really sticks out to me. One is he taught me a lot about respect. He called us. Obviously, he demanded the respect from us, but he called us kids Sir and Mister when he addressed us. And I mean, as a junior high kid, that was the first time anybody had ever done that. And so it kind of taught me that, if you want to get respect from somebody, you have to show respect to them too. Because I had so many authority figures in my life that were demanding respect, but showing very, very little. Right. So that was an important lesson. And, and and show that just because you're an authority figure for someone doesn't mean you can't be as respectful to them as you demand. So I thought that was an important lesson. And another thing he taught me was to control my temper, which I learned the hard way. I was kind of a temperamental kid. I'd get worked up when I was sparring or what have you, and kind of lose my temper and get all worked up. And he noticed it. He knew how to pick out the kids that had these issues and how to deal with them. So at one point, he called me out and he said, "All right, you and me are going to spar." So I went out there and in front of everybody sparred this giant, Vietnam veteran with a, quadruple black belt that could probably kill me with one finger if he wanted to. Anyway, so he has me spar. He gets me out there, and of course I'm trying to go at him. He picks me up and throws me down on the mat. And of course I get mad. I'm seeing red. I get up, I charge at him again. He picks me up, throws me back down on the mat. I get even more mad. I'm charging at him again. Picks me up, throws me down over and over again until finally my temper finally turns off. And I'm thinking, this is so stupid. Why am I still mad at this guy? He's just going to do it again. And then I got over it. And I think that was the last time I really lost my temper in that class, because he just kind of pushed me beyond it, and it worked. So, and I never had a huge issue with my temper after that. It was, it was off and on, but it was just, guy knew how to play me like a fiddle in front of the entire class, and it worked like a charm though. So,
and what belt did you eventually reach?
I believe I got to purple with 2 stripes on it.
Okay, all right. Lessons learned, and
okay.
Unagi, was that what Ross was learning in his karate class? Unagi.
Yeah, I remember almost nothing about karate at this point, but I do remember those lessons. Let's put it that way.
And just the checkpoints, they're just breaking it down. Yep, I love it.
Exactly.
Well, I very quickly, yes, folks, another honorable mention, and actually my mother brought this up. She said, "Well, I can't believe you didn't think about this guy." And I said, "Yes, that's true, but I guess just because it was just such an overall." But my Little League coach, or youth ball, I guess, because it wasn't officially Little League, but I had the same youth coach for my last 4 years in Warren before going to high school in another town. But Bill Zednick was my coach for 4 years. And you talk about a guy who knew how to get potential out of people. And going back to your music teacher, Jim, made things fun. And that's why I never liked it. I played football for a couple of years of my life, but I never understood that beat you down mentality, just that dressing you down. I don't get it. I mean, is there a place for it? Perhaps. I don't know. It just wasn't my sport. But Mr. Zednick, a baseball coach, and someone who eventually became a mentor and a friend. And oh wow, voices kind of went there because we recently he passed away in 2016 about this time, and just the Facebook memories popping up. But the man, and my dad said it best. He was a great coach, a great father. My dad worked with him at Packard Electric, the GM, and just a great man. And I got to enjoy that as a kid and learn valuable lessons as a baseball player and as a person, and then to become the guy's friend later in life and having him as a mentor. I should have moved to Phoenix earlier. Another regret. I could have spent some more time with Mr. Z before he passed. But Bill, gone, never forgotten. But that brings us, if you kind of figured it out by what I said earlier, I've got to get to another co number one, co plus one. My mom and dad, my parents. They were fortunate. I have 2 very intellectually savvy parents. Dad's the math guy. He's the engineer. Mom's the liberal arts. She's the social worker. So I had the best of both worlds, and they nurtured that in me and my brothers, and just positive encouragement all the time, setting expectations, and again, lessons that go beyond the academics and the book smarts. And my mother, especially, me and my brothers, we were taught to read at young ages. And they just wanted the best for us. I mentioned the story earlier with Mr. Gribbling, and the pride my mother took in our academics and then also our athletics. But yeah, this is about educators tonight, folks, and that's something that my mom and dad, I wouldn't have met a Bob Gribling. I wouldn't have been in a situation with Mrs. Abruzzi or Mrs. Anderson without my mom and dad inspiring that first and having those expectations. So, mom and dad, I'm not the person intellectually, or lack of intellect sometimes, I don't know, but without them. So, mom and dad, Mike and Barb Pervoznik, without a doubt, the number one non-school influence in my life. Much love.
Oh, cheers to Mike and Barb.
And I'll be seeing them in a few weeks. So we'll get to that when we're doing shows for them. I might bring them on the show. I don't know. Neither of their podcasts. I know my dad watches from time to time. I don't know. He listens to too much country music. I don't think I can get him to listen to a podcast. So. But Mom, we're going to teach her how to work a podcast. Even if I put her on it. There we go. Anyhow, but that's it for now, folks. We are the Threefer, and which are our top 3 educators in our lives from a scholastic standpoint, and the plus 1 are our non-academic influence. But again, as always, folks, I want to thank you for listening or watching here on All Over the Place. And don't forget, subscribe, share. And I'm going to be inspired now by Father Burke Masters, whose book I am just finishing up, and hopefully we're going to have on the show at some point. He's the name of the book is A Grand Slam for God. He's a baseball guy, on track for a life in baseball, playing, and then management, upper management. But then he got a call to be a priest. And every day on his podcast, he says, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and make sure you like and share with at least one person today. So, inspired by Father Masters, I want to encourage everyone, share with at least one person today. We're all growing together, and we all over the place. Thank you for that. Jim, as always, amazing show, my friend. Thank you very much. Christine in absentia, but with us through the power of editing. We'll be back real soon here, folks, on All Over the Place. Thanks for listening and watching. All Over the Place, where the fun sanity never ends.